Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Koketso Mathebe. I play chess for Vets team. I'm currently enrolled for engineering. So I created this YouTube channel to teach chess. So I call this lockdown challenge 10 days. So it's gonna be from day one. I'm gonna post a video each day until the last day, right? So I want us to play a chess tournament after the lessons, just to see how far are we and what we have learned, to put what we learn into application. And how am I going to do that? There's a platform called Lichess or chess.com, but for this I'm gonna use Lichess to play our chess tournament to host. But don't be confused, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna create a video for you to know how to create your own account and to use Lichess. So after the last day, I'm gonna have that link about the tournament on my Instagram. So before we get started about everything about the chess pieces and all, it is more important to learn about the chessboard, the nature of the chessboard, right? So the chessboard consists of 64 squares, 8 here, 8 here, right? So you have to be able to notice your center. Where is the center? Here's the center. These 4 squares here. One thing to notice. And the key thing to know about the chessboard, you don't put it anyhow. The letters or the alphabets, they must face you, and the numbers on the other side. I know that you notice that I have white this side, I have black this side. The question might be, how do you know where does white belong and black belong? In chess, you can tell that there are numbers here, 1, 2, 8, 7, just like that, in that order. So we put white from 1 and 2, right? And we put black from 8 and 7, okay? And here are the key terms to know about the chessboard. The chessboard has what we call the files and the ranks. What are your files? These vertical lines. You see the vertical, like you can say on the alphabet. Those are your things, your files. And we have your ranks. 1, 2, 3. These are your ranks, the horizontal, in the horizontal direction. Okay? And how do we set up our chess set? But before I get there, you first need to know the names, right? So as you can see here, these are the only chess pieces that we have. I hope I didn't forget any, but these are the only chess pieces we have. Pay attention to the names. This is your bishop. I hope you can see it. That's the bishop. And this is your knight. I find it natural for someone to say it's a horse, but then in chess we call it your knight. And this is your rook or castle, but standard rook. Are we okay with that? Let's move forward. And here we have our queen. As we celebrate our Women's Month, I just want to remind you that queen is the most powerful chess piece here. It has the biggest value, so I hope we honor it. Because let's say you were to play a game and you just lose your queen just like that, you're most likely to lose. The kingdom will fall. So power to the queen. And here we have our king. So I hope you guys be able to distinguish between the two, your king and your queen. As we move forward, and the last one is your pawn. It has the smallest point ever. So I would love to start from the bishop on how it moves. So the bishop moves are diagonal. So as you've noticed that the chessboard has your files and your ranks, and we call these diagonals. Like this is diagonal. So by that I mean that the bishop will only move in one color. If your bishop was initially on the black square, it will forever move on the black square since it moves diagonal. Check this out. You get that in any direction as long as it is diagonal with no limitation, right? So let's say for instance there was your opponent's piece here. Let's say this pawn was here. You can take it since it is in your diagonal direction. You get that? So here when you play chess, we normally have 2 bishops. The other one's gonna be on the light square, the other one's gonna be on your dark square. So the one on the light square will remain on the light square, and the one on the dark square will remain on the dark square. Meaning that the lighter one can only capture the pieces on the lighter square, and the dark one will only capture the pieces on the dark square, just like this. Did you get that? Another thing to note about your bishop is that, let's take for instance, you have your piece here. This piece, which is your pawn, it blocks the movement of your bishop in a sense that it cannot move or jump. All the pieces, they cannot jump. There's only one piece that can jump, of which is your knight. And it makes sense. It's a horse after all. So these ones, they can't jump unless there's an opponent piece of which they can capture. I will go with the bishop. Let's move forward to the next piece. Now we have our knights. I don't know if the knights are complicated, but I personally find them to be simple. So the knights, they are normally arranged here when the game starts. How do we move our knights? We move them using an L shape or 7 in any direction. Just use the shape to remember. I don't know if this is shaped as 7, but in my eyes I can see 7 or L. So how does a knight move? It moves in an L direction, but we have to count. So we count 1, 2 horizontally or 1, 2 vertically. Then we turn. Let's do that in practice. 1, 2, then we turn. So I don't know if you noticed, but it was an L, right? And what you should notice is that when it is in the dark square, it's gonna move to the light square. When it is in the light square, it's gonna move to the dark square. So let's practice again. The knight can go where 1, 2, 3, it turns. Or it can go where 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. Are we good with that? Let me just show you an example. Let's take for instance now, here's our position in chess. You see this pawn, it is not an obstacle to the knight, since the knight can jump. It's gonna jump this pawn and say 1, 2, 3 and capture. That's how you capture with your knight. Or if it was here, we had an option of capturing here. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. So let's move forward now. So what other piece are we left with now? I covered the knight and the bishop. So now we have our rook or castle. So how does the castle move? This one is the easiest. The castle moves are vertical or horizontal, just straight, in straight line. The castles are normally situated here. That's where you find your castle. Standard, by the way, guys, don't use castle, use rook. As I've mentioned, they only move horizontal or vertical. So if your castle is here, they have no limitation. It can move in any amount as long as it is horizontal or vertical. Let's see. Did you get that? Can move from here until here. That was vertical. Again, about horizontal, can move here until then. So how does it work? Let's take for instance, we have our piece here, our pawn. Feels like it is always the victim, but it's okay. So you're gonna take it. Just like that. That was horizontal. What about vertical? It was here. Did you get that? No matter how far it can be, you can take as long as it is in the straight line. And then for your notes, you cannot take your own pieces and you cannot jump with your rook. Only the knight jump. So you cannot take this piece. You are blocked. Keep that in mind. So I covered the bishop, I covered the knight, I covered the rook. So now let's go to our queen. As I've mentioned, the queen is powerful. The queen can move like the bishop and the rook and the pawn combined. But the most important thing to note is that the queen cannot move like your knight, right? So what I'm trying to show you is that since it moves like the bishop and your rook, take for instance, we have this pawn there. Now it's gonna move like the bishop to take. Remember, the bishop moves in a diagonal direction. Diagonal is when you move from a straight line, but from the left or to the right corner, or from the right corner to the left corner. That's diagonal. Just like that. Okay? But since it moves also like your rook, it's gonna take it. Are we good with that? Perfect. What are we left with? I hope I didn't miss anything before I get into our king. So here we have our lazy king. It only moves one step. That's how it moves, just one step in any direction. Provided where it moves, there is no danger. So king here, the main goal of chess is to trap your king. So the king must always be safe. If I trap your king in a sense whereby it is attacked and it cannot be moved, it cannot move anywhere, that's a checkmate. Okay, but the next video will be about checkmate and checks. For now, it's just pawn and chess. So the king can only move one direction into a safe square. Take for instance, we have our pawn here. Since it moves in one direction, it can take this pawn provided it is not protected. Or it can move to any square only in one direction, provided what? Provided the square it is not threatened. Because if it moves to the square, remember your rook moves how? Vertical. So it is not a good idea for the king to move into the protected or attacked square. It's not just a good idea, it is not allowed, prohibited. So I believe we understand our king. So now let's move to our last piece, our smallest piece, which is situated where? Remember I talked about ranks. So here you're gonna have these major pieces, your knight, your rook. In the second rank, you're gonna have your pawns here. There are 8 of them, right? So the pawn, they're of the lowest value, points. I didn't mention the points, I'll get back to them. So how do the pawns actually move? They're a bit complicated, I think, but then I'll try and simplify their movement. The pawn can only move forward. Only can move forward. The rest of the pieces, they can move backwards, as you've noticed. Your knight, your king, but the pawn forward we move. It's the painful part about the pawn, but it's okay. So no matter how hard or no matter what kind of pressure it can face, it has no choice but to move forward. It cannot run backwards like other pieces. So how does the pawn move? As I've mentioned, it moves forwards, right? But how does it capture? It captures vertically forward, but in one square. I don't know if you get me. Vertical, forward, once. So this is what I mean. Let's say for instance, I have my pawn here, and I have my opponent's pawn here. So how am I going to capture? I said it captures diagonal forward. The point that I'm trying to emphasize by diagonal forward is that if my opponent is here and they passed and I'm here, I cannot take backwards with the pawn. No, I cannot. I only take when my opponent is in a vertical square, but not any vertical square. I said close, just one square difference, not even one square difference. Just like this. Are we okay with that? And I just want to outline more facts about the pawn. When the pawns are like this, or when there is another opponent's piece, we say the pawn is blocked. Okay? It cannot pass this pawn, it cannot go aside. It only go aside when it captures. Take for instance, this pawn is blocked. Okay? This pawn is blocked for now. Since this is white, we are going forward, black is coming this way. So I cannot do anything. The only time I will move my pawn is when my opponent decides to be kind enough to push his pawn here. So from now, I can actually capture this pawn and move forward. Are we good? Awesome. So now, since I've mentioned each and every piece, and I hope everyone is fine, but we will constantly remind each other on how the pieces actually move. So in chess, we don't randomly arrange pieces like you put your rook here on how you want. There is an order. The first order is to know that the black pieces, they belong on the other side. The white pieces, they belong on the other side. So I'm going to arrange the white pieces first for you and teach you on how to arrange. There's an order which is easy to remember and there's symmetry. So if you are able to see your center here, you can start with the king and queen. But I won't do that. I'm gonna start with your rooks or your castle, right? So the castle, they stay here, they belong here at the edge of the board, right, on the last rank. I'm gonna do the same thing for black. The pieces are always facing each other. While I'm picking, I'm gonna tell you the points. The castle have 5 points. They have 5 points each of them. Followed by what? By the knight. The knight belongs here. The knight has 3 points. Remember that the importance of the points or the value, to understand the value of something, is to know that when you trade the pieces, is it worth it? Are you gonna sell something that you bought with $10, or are you gonna exchange something that is more worth for something that has less value? So you should pay attention to the value. So the knight has 3 points, then your rook has 5 points. Let me do the same for black. So now here, followed by our bishops. Our bishop also have the 3 points, same as the knight. 3 points, 3 points. So I'm gonna arrange them here. Where our black bishops? There they are. So do you see the order? Your rook, followed by the knight, followed by your bishop. So in the interesting part here is the king and the queen. One might think that you just put them anyhow, but here is the logic behind. The queen always sit on the light square. There is the light square. And how many points does the king have? The queen, I meant to say, it has 9 points. As I've mentioned, it is of the highest value. I mean, like, you appreciate the queen. Yeah, of the highest value. And since chess is symmetric on how we arrange our pieces, I'm gonna put my queen here. The pieces must always face each other. If they're not, something is wrong. Then we have our king next to the queen, always next to the king. So if you know where the queen belongs, you know where the king belongs. So the king belongs next to the queen. One might ask, what is the value of the king? The king doesn't have a value, in a sense whereby, how can I put it? Like, since the chess, we normally trade pieces. We don't trade the kings, so that's why they don't have a value. We want to attack and checkmate them. I can't provide a proper reason, but I just tried. So now we have our last piece to arrange. I have an extra knight here, which are pawns. Pawns are simple to arrange. They look the same, trust me, like they truly look the same. It's not like this one belongs here and this one belongs here. So your pawns belong in the 2nd rank or the 7th rank. From here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7th rank, let me arrange them. Second rank, the white ones, they belong in the 2nd rank. The dark ones, they belong in the 7th rank. Here we are. This is our chess set. We discussed the board, we discussed the points and how they move. Okay? Before I close, for recap, to remember how the pawns actually move, I'm gonna create a simple task for you, and you're gonna tell me which piece to use to capture. So I'm gonna take this rook to eliminate each pawn here, right? So the logic behind here, let me do it the other way. The logic behind here is that each and every pawn here is protected. So with your knowledge, you're gonna tell me this pawn is protected by what? Okay? So let me begin. So I'm gonna take here first. You tell me which piece I'm gonna use to take this rook. The rook, of course, since it moves vertical. Okay, fine. So now let's say I continue and take here. Which piece am I going to use to take this rook? Your bishop, since it moves how? Vertically. It is in the light square, it's gonna move in the light square forever. So I can take my opponent's piece, right? So let's say I continue and capture him. Which piece can take him? Definitely not the rook, definitely not the knight since it moves L, definitely not the bishop since it moves diagonal. So I'm gonna use my king since it can only move once. That's the best it can do here. Awesome. Therefore, I'm gonna take the second pawn now, the fourth pawn, which is the most protected. Which pieces am I gonna use? I can use my queen, I can use my king, I can use my bishop, I can use my knight, I can use my castle or rook. I'm lying, you can't use your castle, it's too far. Remember, it only moves vertical and horizontal. So let's do so. With the queen, remember, it moves as a bishop, so I can take. Perfect. I can also take here with the king, since it moves forward in any direction. It can move backwards like any other piece in the last rank, at the last rank. Or I can use my bishop, since it moves diagonal. Okay? Or I can use the most complicated piece here, your knight. Since it moves L, this is an L. 1, 2, 3 with 10. Okay? So notice every time black to white. Thank you. I think I'm done now actually. I think I'm done with everything. So just to recap, your board, your center, it's the most important part. You need to control it, but I'll get there. Your files, your ranks, the pieces, and the points, right? So I'm done. Thank you for watching my video. I truly appreciate your support, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.